You can have your complaints about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears offense, but you're not winning any game you're giving up 52 points.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And on the show today, we got to pick up the pieces after a really messy Week 2 blowout loss to the Detroit Lions, where plenty of blame to go around, but the biggest story has to be the defense giving up 52 points and really looking bad from start to finish. The offense, not a ton better, but felt like baby steps from where we were in Week 1, but still a lot of things that need to get better. So we'll wrap up looking at the way things will get better, the pathway towards more success than what this 0-2 start has begun. But really, to me, all the offense stuff is going to be under the radar or under the microscope no matter what. But this defense has been underwhelming and worse than we thought it would. And it goes beyond just, oh, well, they've had injuries, so ho-hum, we can't expect that group to be good. The things that we thought might be a problem for this Bears defense are popping up as a problem, and even some things we didn't think would be as much of a problem are also already problems. I think Exhibit A here is the pass rush. We had a feeling coming into the season that, like, hey, Montez Sweat, Dayo Odeyingbo, Grady Jarrett, Javon Dexter, they might be okay, but you don't really have much depth behind them. And lo and behold, they don't get much pressure on Jared Goff. They get him a little bit here and there. Montez Sweat had his first sack of the season, but then negated by penalties. And that's another huge, huge factor in this game. I think it's easy to just focus on the offensive penalties in this game because things like false starts or illegal formations are, the most frustrating because it feels like, well, those are just simple, easy things that should be, quickly correctable here. But this Bears defense was absolutely part of the penalty, festivities here, if you will. Tyreek Stevenson had that illegal contact that offset the Montez Sweat sack there in the first half. And then, as this game goes on, you get, especially down the stretch in that fourth quarter, I think there were a couple of penalties that added to what was already a lost cause here. And it just feels to me like, man, there's a lot that they need to clean up. And we know that this was going to be a potential problem in the pass rush and that it was going to be on Dennis Allen's shoulders to find a way to scheme up a rush. That they have some talent, but maybe not enough. But can coaching overcome a talent deficiency in the pass rush? So far through 2 weeks, the answer has been no. I do think there's probably more Dennis Allen can do there, but I also think he can't just do everything all at once from the get-go out of the gate. And then on the back end, right, Jared Goff slicing and dicing this Bears secondary. You look at like his next-gen stats passing chart, and he's hitting deep shots over the middle. He's hitting touchdowns to the sideline. They kept burning the Bears in that intermediate area of the field. When the Bears would go into single deep coverage, they'd get right in front of whoever that safety was, and he'd hit Amon-Ra St. Brown or whoever, 4, 5, 6 different times over the middle of the field. And then, of course, if you start crowding too much to the middle of the field, they throw to the sidelines. And when he's got clean pockets to throw from, he can step up. And we know that you give Jared Goff time to throw in the pocket and don't get him under pressure, he's going to do this kind of thing. And so it was on Dennis Allen and this pass rush to find a way to get home, and they couldn't. And it comes down to this broader chicken and egg conversation of like, are the players the problem? Like, is Ryan Poles not giving a good enough roster for Dennis Allen, or is Dennis Allen not doing enough with the players Ryan Poles has? I tend to feel like it's both, and because you get some tricky situations here where it's like we all thought Montez Sweat is and would be better at this point. We all thought Grady Jarrett is and would be better at this point. And I'll even throw Kevin Byard in there at safety, who had a horrible game. He was out of position on multiple Detroit Lions touchdowns where there was supposed to be some coverage communicated, and he didn't. And he was out of space. And blown coverage that makes it way too easy for Jared Goff and company. And Kevin Byard taking bad angles and missing tackles. And it's like, all right, you've got a 10-year pro here playing poorly. And at some point, it's like, well, did Ryan Poles get it wrong in identifying these players who have been good? Or is the coaching staff not coaching them properly to put them in position to succeed and making sure that they have all the communication down, right? And we don't know, we can't tell the answer to those questions. I think it's a little bit more clear-cut. Like if you have a young guy or a draft pick or whatever that's just clearly bad, then you can kind of tell, okay, maybe the personnel is the wrong move there. But like we've seen Montez Sweat be good. We've seen Grady Jarrett be good. We've seen Kevin Byard be good, and they're not playing good right now. So then is that coaching, or are Jarrett and Byard just over the hill and washed players that aren't going to help you out very much anymore? I mean, that's the real kind of almost existential issue facing this Bears defense. Like, are they just plain not good enough, or are they just not playing well enough? Like, there's a difference there. Like, are they capable of better than this, or is this just kind of who we are? I mean, of course, they're not going to give up 52 points every week. So, like, as a defense, they're going to play better than this. But I mean, specifically the guys individually that are struggling. Like, is this just what Grady Jarrett, Kevin Byard, Montez Sweat? I keep singling out those guys, but it's not just them. But they're sort of the easy veteran examples. Tremaine Edmonds not playing particularly well. Like, is this just what they're going to be? And so the Bears have to find a way to scheme around that? Or can you count on these guys settling in and getting back to playing to the higher caliber of football that we've seen them play so far? Because I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, like some of the younger players on the defense, you could expect there might be some ups and downs with them, and that what you see through the first 2 weeks might not be what you see through all 17 games of the upcoming season. So like there's room for things to change, but it's the veteran guys that you thought were more established that ultimately, you know, are the bigger question marks to me. Then you add in the re-injury of Jalen Johnson and the re-injury of TJ Edwards, plus the existing absence of Kyler Gordon, and that makes life that much more difficult trying to stop the Detroit Lions offense. But your defense was struggling even before those guys got hurt once again. So those could be potentially, you know, catastrophic what Ben Johnson indicated, this likely re-aggravations of the same injuries they'd been dealing with. So then how much longer does that put them out? You got 2 more games and a bye week. I mean, it's really easy to kind of let a big loss like this unravel and feel like the whole roster's broken, coaches are all bad, and they got to fire everybody and blow this up because they're never going to win another game again. And we know that's not true, but they absolutely have a lot farther to go than maybe we all thought they would. And I think we have some real questions about Dennis Allen. And not to say that he's all of a sudden a bad coach, but just like, I think we were right to have higher expectations for how this defense would come out. We knew the offense might be a little bit slow rolling, young quarterback, new system, new offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. There's some more patience for that group. But like for Dennis Allen's group, it kind of felt like, all right, guys, like they were ahead. They're veterans, not as complicated what you're asking them to do. So that should have been a better group to get started. And that has absolutely not been the case through the first 2 weeks of the season, but only 2 weeks it has been. And at least on the bright side, it felt like some baby steps for this Bears offense. Wasn't good enough, but headed in the right direction as opposed to the defense headed in the wrong direction. So we'll check in on what Caleb Williams did better and also still needs to keep getting better at, and some of the other issues that are absolutely holding this Bears offense back next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right means cashing in. With football back, PrizePicks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and you can turn your takes into real prizes, all in less than 60 seconds. They're giving out max discounts every week, where, say, next week, Patrick Mahomes' stat projections for passing yards is set at 0.5 passing yards. So if he has more than 1 passing yard, that's automatically a pick, a win in your picks. So then you could add Caleb Williams passing, DeAndre Swift rushing, Rome Odunze's receiving, or whatever else you're looking for to cash in on your picks. So download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. This Bears defense was absolutely the bigger problem today, but that doesn't, and in week one, in this week 2 game, I should say, but the offense still needs to be better. And it's kind of a careful line to toe here of like, I want to praise the offense for the amounts of progress they did make, and also make sure that we are critical of the offense for how much they still have to go. I mean, 14 points in the first half was not all that bad, all things considered, but then you fail to score until you get really late into the fourth quarter there. I guess it was early fourth quarter, but you're into garbage time at that point of the process, and you're already down by 40 or 31 points at the time. So like, essentially, the second half completely dropping off there felt like energy out of the gates was gone, and never really could get into a rhythm in that second half. And I think there were a lot of contributing factors here, because like when you look at the final box score, DeAndre Swift finished over 5 yards per carry, ran the ball decently well, ripped off a 20-yard run in there that raised the average. But I think even if you take that run out, he still was about 4 yards per carry. So they were getting what they wanted in the ground game. Calvin Guy at 4 yards per carry. For the most part, the Bears' running game was improved. Now, they weren't, 100 yards rushing from the running backs on the ground. I think as a team, you had the quarterbacks in there. I think they got to 100, but like they need the running game to still be better. But it was better than it was in week 1 when it felt like they just couldn't get anything going for DeAndre Swift. So like there's some progress there, but I think part of the why you didn't see more running in this game, despite the success, is that you started getting so far behind on the scoreboard. And all of a sudden you're down 3 touchdowns, and well, you can't have a 12-play drive that takes 7 minutes off the clock running the ball 8 times, because you got a little bit more of a sense of urgency there to get some points on the board. And maybe even the bigger factor than that is all the different ways the Bears offense really shot itself in the foot in this game. It's like, you'd have a first down run for 4 yards, get you 2nd and 6, but then you'd have a false start or holding penalty. So now you're back to 2nd 11. So, okay, now we're not going to pass here. And then you get sacked and it's 3rd and 14, and now you're definitely not going to run here. So then it's like, well, you wanted to run the ball more, but little things beyond the control of the running game made it a lot more difficult to run. And that, I think those penalties and a couple of those sacks and just those miscommunications started putting you behind the sticks and put Caleb Williams into more and more difficult down and distance situations where he couldn't quite get into as much of a rhythm as you'd like. I thought generally Caleb was more accurate this week than he was in week 1. Obviously a big miss on the interception that just looked really, really bad. And there were a couple other easier throws that you would have liked him to miss. But you also had a couple passes hit Rome Odunze in the hands that he really should have held on to. And I'm not gonna throw Rome Odunze under the bus here for having 7 catches, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was a great Rome Odunze performance. But, little things like that do start to add up when what should be a completion for Caleb goes down as an incompletion for Caleb. And then this all comes back to the offensive line too, right? Where he's sacked 4 times in this game and seemed to be kind of coming from all over the place. There was, one play where Darnell Wright was slow getting off the line of scrimmage, so Marcus Davenport whips him and gets right by and gets right to the quarterback. There was a play when Braxton Jones gave up a swim move to the inside Hutchinson, I think, ducked him to the outside for way too easy pressure, turn the corner and get in the quarterback. And even, on the interior there between Tooney and Dahlman and Jackson, I think it was a little bit better, but still a little bit too much of that pocket collapsing at the top there, not as much room for Caleb Williams to work there. And so then you get to Caleb Williams also missing a few throws and inaccurate a time or two here, but generally still pretty good decision making, getting through progressions, looking to and finding open receivers, getting to his check down when he needs to. Again, you're not seeing a lot of like horrible decisions. I suppose the interception play wasn't the best decision in the world because of the difficulty of the throw. But it wasn't like Zacchaeus. There was a miscommunication with Zacchaeus. He said after the game, he thought Zacchaeus was going to go more vertical. Zacchaeus ended up going more flat towards the sideline, so he threw it where he thought Zacchaeus was going to go. But presumably, if they're on the same page there, that's not in a vacuum. That's maybe not a bad decision. Thinking he thought he knew where the receiver, if the receiver's where he thought it would be, it wasn't like this horrible like what were you possibly thinking? You can all see what he was thinking. Maybe it wasn't the best decision. Maybe it wasn't the smartest decision. Maybe it wasn't the safest decision. But it could be, we've seen Caleb complete that pass before So it's not the worst decision in the world. So I come away with this game like not absolving Caleb Williams of any mistakes or blame, but like he's a lot lower on the list of issues that went wrong in this game than he was in week one. And I point to the penalties and the offensive line issues and the miscommunications and the defense not holding up its end of the bargain and making the offense have to pass and score and try and get back into this. Like a lot of different things all were contributing to the offense not having a good enough performance. Like at the end of the day, if you just look at Caleb's box score stats, which is not a good measurement at all the time, but 19 of 30 for 207 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, a 92 passer rating. Though that is not a performance that loses you the game. It's not a performance that wins you the game, but it's not a performance that loses you the game. You have seen quarterbacks win games with worse stat lines than that. Just like you've seen quarterbacks lose games with better stat lines than that, right? Like he's kind of somewhere in the middle. And maybe as a number 1 overall pick in his second year, he needs to be better than that. But he's not high on the list of things that absolutely went wrong for this team this game. Like you can survive one Caleb Williams interception in any given game here or there if you're running the ball and you're staying ahead of the sticks and you're blocking well and you're not getting these penalties and not forcing yourself back, and your defense is giving you the ball back and not giving up scores seemingly every time the other team touched the ball. And so it's this weird mix of like positive, but man, like this shouldn't be that hard. And it wasn't supposed to be that hard with Ben Johnson coaching the offense. Like the penalties thing is maybe the most confounding for me because you still have 8 penalties, I think it was in this game. You get a false start by Darnell Wright in the first quarter. You get a holding on Jonah Jackson. I think was that later in the first quarter, I think. And then you get another holding on Drew Dahlman in the second quarter. A face mask on Braxton Jones. That ended up being a 15-yard penalty. I never got a good explanation for that. But like Ben Johnson harped over and over and over on penalties, discipline, communication. Like these things can't be a problem, and yet they still are. And at some point, it's like, well, like is usually we think of penalties and sloppy discipline as a head coach problem, but it's very clearly been an emphasis for the head coach. So then now what? Like, is it just players that don't listen? I mean, it's sort of a lead the horse to water, but can you make him drink? I don't know. It's been 12 penalties and now 8. I guess that's an improvement. If you want to be, literally it is an improvement, just not anywhere close to nearly good enough for what it needs to be. So I just don't know when and how that's supposed to get better if it's still not getting better. And you can say, well, this time it was on the road, hostile environment, et cetera, but you're going to have those all season. And they were having a ton of those problems at home in the first game. So I don't know what the excuse is there. So I just that to me is the most confounding part. It's one thing to say, hey, yeah, Caleb and his receivers will fix some of those communication things. The accuracy and the mechanics will probably get a little bit better. And we'll talk about the things that are going to get better in a moment. But like at some point, like the penalties are a recurring, repeating issue. Like, do you have to bench somebody? I mean, you certainly you're not going to bench Darnell Wright. He's probably your best right offensive lineman so far this season. But if he keeps having multiple penalties every game, at some point, do you got to send a message just to sit him down for a series? I mean, but is that going to make him focus better? They've been harping on penalties the whole time. Like, I just don't know. I don't know what the solution is for the penalties, but it absolutely is one of those low-hanging fruit, super easy thing that they just have to find a way to fix. And I don't know how they fix it, but 31 other teams, maybe not 31, but 25 to 30 other teams find a way to not have big penalty problems. A couple teams always have penalty problems, but those are always the really, really bad teams. And the Bears aren't supposed to be one of those really, really bad teams, but that's certainly what they're playing like right now through the first 2 games of the season. The good news is they're not going to give up 52 points every single week. This was the first time they did give up 50 since 2014. Even in some really bad Bears seasons, they're not giving up 50 every week. It is going to get better, and we're going to go through some of the ways that it will get better, just naturally, things that we can expect to continue to get better and find some other positives coming out of what's otherwise a really negative loss. Next on Locked On Bears. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all turn to some funny places for advice. Maybe your barista, your barber, even a random stranger in the bathroom. But not everyone is the right one when it comes to real support, and that's why BetterHelp is here. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 10 years of experience, BetterHelp helps you find your right match, someone clinically trained and credentialed to guide you through life's challenges. I do online therapy, and it's a really important part of my own personal mental health regimen. That's why I recommend a service like BetterHelp because it's flexible. You join sessions online from home or on the go, which makes therapy fit into your busy schedule. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Find the one with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The Locked On Bears podcast is also brought to you by Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use our limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using our promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25 cents per gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. A lot of negative to not like from Bears Lions. We could spend the whole podcast complaining and moaning and firing Ryan Poles and firing Ben Johnson and firing Dennis Allen and you blowing up the whole roster or whatever. It's very easy to be upset and angry, and I think it is right to be upset and angry and disappointed. Like I'm not here to tell you that to sugarcoat it and say that, oh no, it's actually good. Don't worry, everything is fine. This is bad, and they got a lot of work to do. But I do think it will get better. I don't necessarily mean they're going to fix everything and make the playoffs, but it's not going to be this bad every single time. There's just very clearly real things that get better over the course of the season when they're as bad as they are right now. Like I think about for this Bears offense, this is a group that as they continue to get more reps together will clean up some things. I can't guarantee everything. I can't tell you which things, but things will get more clean and second nature and natural and smooth with more time, more reps, more experience. Like the miscommunication between Zacchaeus and Caleb Williams on the interception, like that's the kind of thing that gets better with time, that you make the mistake and then you learn from it. And the idea was that you were supposed to make all those mistakes in training camp and preseason so that you wouldn't have to make them in the regular season. But every mistake you make in those is a learning point that they can then correct and get better. And it sucks that you have to eat the bad loss while you learn those things, but that is how you get better at it, unfortunately. Like we're already seeing Caleb and Rome so much more on the same page. 7 catches, 120 some odd yards. I lost the number in front of me here. Like there were a lot of times last year when Caleb was looking to Rome and he was throwing it to a spot that Rome was not at. But that didn't really seem like much of a problem. Again, a couple of like drop type of situations, but not a miscommunication. 11 targets, 7 catches, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. That's progress. And if more time with Rome Odunze builds that connection and that progress, then presumably more time with DJ Moore, more time with Olamide Zacchaeus, more time with Colston Loveland, more time with Cole Kmet. I mean, that all can build in that direction and should get smoother with time. I think the same thing is true to some extent for the offensive line. Like it's not necessarily that Braxton Jones is going to become a better blocker or Jonah Jackson is going to become a better blocker, but I do think as Dahlman and Tooney and Jackson get just more reps working together, they get better at communicating, passing off stunts and blitzes. And I thought that aspect, at least on the first watch through, seemed generally improved. They still got to be better one-on-one, winning their blocks, and certainly a couple penalties we talked about in there is a problem too. But like there didn't feel like as much of that egregious, like, holy crap, that guy just came up the middle unblocked because Jackson and Dahlman each thought the other guy was going to get it. Like there's already been some small amounts of offensive line cleaning up there. Still a problem, still a long way to go, but progress is progress, and we're not going to ignore positive signs just because there was so much other negative stuff. And I just think in general, individual players. We talked before, in the last week or so on this podcast about how like these veteran guys, we just talked about the defense with Byard and Swift and Grady Jarrett. Like, how are those guys going to get any better? They're veterans. They're kind of already are who they are. But the young guys are still learning and still developing and still going to get better. That includes Caleb Williams. He's not a final product. He's in the second year of his career. He's going to have games where he's a lot better than this. He's going to have games where he's worse than this. Like, it's not like every week you get 5% better. It's like one week you'll get 10% better and then you'll get a little worse. It's not linear. There's ups and downs. You just hope that it's generally trending in a net positive along the way there. But same thing is true for all the complaining about Colston Loveland and Luther Burden being non-existent in this Bears offense right now. First of all, Loveland blocks a lot. He does play more than 50% of the offensive snaps. He's not non-existent. He's just not getting targets in the passing game. Second of all, he's a rookie who missed all of OTAs, as did Luther Burden. So like I'm a lot more willing to be patient for Colston Loveland and Luther Burden than it seems like a lot of Bears fans on social media are. But also, those guys will keep getting better. They're not finished products. They're nowhere close to what the Bears want them to be over the course of their careers. And the Loveland and Burden picks will not be judged and evaluated on what they do in the first 2 games of their rookie season. It's what they do in the first 5 years of their career, really. And even you can throw Darnell Wright in this conversation. Like, I know he's not as young as some of these first and second year players, but like he's a player who is still getting better at this stage of his career. I think, honestly, Braxton Jones might be a player he's only just turned 26. He's in his 4th NFL season. This is not a 8-year pro. Like, players still getting better as they enter their prime. Like, there is natural improvement that if they are coached well, which maybe that's not as a clear-cut yes as we maybe thought it was, but if they're coached well, those guys should get better. Same thing on defense. Like, Tyreek Stevenson, had some more bad moments, but like, he's not a finished product as a corner. He can keep getting better. Doesn't mean he's going to become a Pro Bowl caliber player, but like, young players with time and talent and coaching improve. And Stevenson's going to have better games and he's going to have worse games, just like Caleb or any other player on this roster. Jaquan Brisker can continue to keep getting better. I thought he looked pretty sharp this game. I think he was their leading tackler, came downhill, made a lot of plays. As long as he's healthy, you're feeling good about Jaquan Brisker. But you can throw it on the defensive line, like Javon Dexter. We see flashes. He's been getting better. There's ups and downs, but getting there. And even Dio Dengbo, as a highly priced free agent signing, we knew when they signed him that he was more of a developmental player. He's also not even 26 years old yet. He is 25 years old, turns 26 in like 2 weeks, not even 2 weeks. But like, we've not seen peak prime Dio Dengbo yet either. He had a good week 1, not as good week 2, but like, that's the nature of having some young players in your team. But you just, if your coaching staff is as good as advertised or somewhere is better than what they had in the previous coaching staff, young guys on this team should continue to get better. I also think, just generally from a defensive standpoint, I think there's more Dennis Allen can do and that he will do and has more tricks up his sleeve, where like first 2 weeks of the season, he can't necessarily throw out every blitz, every coverage disguise, every sim pressure. Like, he can't do everything. He can't run everything in the playbook right away in the first 2 weeks of the season. Like, as much as defense is easier to pick up quickly, like, some things are kind of specific and minutia that does take some more time to sort of install and develop and really perfect there, especially when you now have backup linebacker, backup cornerback, backup slot cornerback in there. Like, it becomes a little, he's a little bit, I don't want to say handcuffed because that sounds like too much of an excuse, but I can understand why Dennis Allen is a little bit hesitant to just like try everything if he's not sure how well he can trust Nahshon Wright and Nick McLeod and Noah Sewell as starters in your defense when you were planning on those players being Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and TJ Edwards. So I think there is more Dennis Allen can do and reason to believe that perhaps with some patience, he can unlock a little bit more here. I think they still haven't blitzed very much in either of these 2 games. We finally saw Montez Sweat move around a little bit more on the defensive line this game and mixing up personnel on the defensive line. I think there's more they can do there too. And then we don't know exactly how long Jalen Johnson and TJ Edwards are going to be out. That's a real concern at this point as they re-aggravate their injuries. But presumably, they won't be season ending, right? Fingers crossed. But also, like, Kyler Gordon will be back at some point too. And he's supposed to kind of be the secret weapon here who lines up all over the defense. And it's kind of a chess piece for Dennis Allen that he hasn't had a chance to use yet. And I just think also just having him back and out there will be an upgrade as well. So I think there's reasons to suggest things can and will get some amount of better. Will everything be fixed? Will it be a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense? Maybe not. But improvement, it's definitely coming. And now we've got the Matt Eberflus revenge game coming up this week to break down and get excited for a Cowboys team that has a good offense, not so good defense. So it'll be interesting to see if the Bears end up getting into a shootout. But we'll have all week to break down that matchup right here on Locked On Bears. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're looking for a second listen today, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day in the morning, and then Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end your day. So find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Come on back to Locked On Bears tomorrow. Make us your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.